Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. If you're watching this, listening to this on Monday. If not, hope you're having a good midweek, end of week, whenever you decide to jump in here. Appreciate you taking some time back to hopefully maximize your Monday or just your week in general. Have a new guest with me this week. I have Chad joining me, a longtime friend. I've been thinking about asking you to do this for some time, but your schedule's always just been so crazy that I never really thought that you could carve out some time. So I appreciate you taking some time to jump on here with me today and talk about your journey through systems engineering, through real estate, through small business ownership, large business ownership, and everything you've done in between. So appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, it's cool. I really I like doing this. I like connecting with people. I probably spend at least a third of my time doing some form of this every week and have now for quite some time, which maybe we can talk about more as we move
Yeah.
along here. But yeah, I see it as kind of part of the journey and um it feels good to give back and then it also creates tons of long-term relationships.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's good.
Definitely. So let's start with the journey, man. I mean, you went to school for systems engineering, and then eventually made your way into real estate, property management, and you've been doing a lot of different projects within that now for the past several years. So just wanted to have you kind of walk me through that. You know, what initially got you interested in working in property management, real estate, and now that you've been doing this for some time, what holds your interest? What motivates you to stay in that path that you're on?
Yeah, so in some ways I feel like my career journey is kind of a journey of two, right? So I got an engineering background, which by the way, I mean, no regrets there. I think degrees like that, they teach you problem solving and um and they definitely give you a lot of credibility when you're trying to get out of your first couple of jobs. But then I spent my first kind of like 10 years actually in digital advertising. Um, And it's interesting. I always knew I wanted to start a company. So I, in particular, chose an industry and in particular a company at a college that I felt could best um, give me the background I thought that could be helpful towards starting a company someday.
Mm.
And literally, when the guy who owned the company, it was called advertising.com, when he was recruiting, he literally said, you know, we have an entrepreneurial mindset here and we train people as if they're running their own company and tons of people have come out of here to start their own companies and I was at that was like the pitch I needed and that was perfect. So I spent about 10 years in digital advertising and I do recommend that. I mean, I think if someone wants to start a company, I think I think starting to work for a well put together company, it teaches you a lot of things that you're basically being paid by someone else to learn some of these tricks of the trade that they can be helpful because I think people underestimate how many different things you have to know to run a company. It is kind of wild. So I did that for about 10 years. And then what led the switch was actually a mutual friend of ours. We're actually on the road. So anyone who's been on the Pennsylvania Turnpike before, we were literally on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. My best friend growing up, his name's Nate, and we were on the turnpike from Lancaster to Pittsburgh, going to another friend's bachelor party. And he said that he was interested in getting into real estate. Uh, he had time, but not a lot of extra money. I had extra money and banks that wanted to lend to me, but I had no time.
Mm.
And I also knew nothing about real estate,
Yeah.
literally nothing. And so we decided, all right, there could be a partnership here. So we started to acquire some properties and then started a property management company. And I think one of the things I've learned is that sometimes jobs and careers that don't seem really sexy, sometimes there's an opportunity there to do something
Yeah.
because the bar might not be super high. And in the property management world, that is kind of how it was there's a lot of kind of very below average property management companies. So very quickly we were able to, with some my background in tech and advertising helped us get out to more people. So I kind of ran the growth side, sales, marketing, and kind of more the business side of the business. And then my business partner Nate ran all kind of the day to day operations. And yeah, we, I I love business. I love starting businesses. And I think for me, when you're doing something you love, it doesn't, the week flies by. I work a lot of hours, but I love it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
fun. It's enjoyable. It's not painful. Um, put me in a different job. Like this week, I was covering for our office admin, and it was painful. I mean, I couldn't wait for the week to end. So, I don't think everything in work is not enjoyable. It's just when you find yourself doing things you like, the weeks really fly by.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. So you mentioned Nate, and I know he moved from education into property management. Now with you, I moved from education to recruiting, and you mentioned, no regrets of getting your degree, but that's kind of the hesitation I see from people sometimes when they're looking to switch jobs. You invested all this time, all this money into getting the degree, and now you're leaving that to pursue something new. So walk me a little bit through what you took with you from that degree that you obtained in systems engineering, and then the initial jobs that you've held. You kind of mentioned it, background in tech help, but what were some of those transferable skills that you took with you? Because I think that's
Well,
the biggest
yeah.
hurdle. A lot.
One thing I'll say is, so it's interesting, and I faced this. I did. It was a bummer because when I left digital advertising, I had a ton of friends and connections in that world, and I was moving into real estate. And I remember the first couple weeks feeling like, oh man, I'm kind of starting fresh. But the huge win is that when you come into a separate industry with your different background than maybe anyone else has an industry or most people have an industry, you're actually able to kind of look at things from a different light that can oftentimes lead to some new ways of thinking about things. So from my perspective, the average person who runs a property management company, usually they manage a couple hundred properties. They've got 2 or 3 employees. I was coming from a tech company that had 500 employees and was running digital advertising for some of the best marketing Fortune 500 companies in the world. So when I took that skill set of kind of a high growth mentality and really understanding technology at its core into property management, we were running circles around the average, really kind of traditional management company. I mean, most of these companies were lucky to have a website. They have no idea what SEO is or Google AdWords or even just some of the more like fundamental technologies that we could pull from a more tech centric company into prime management. We weren't really a tech company per se, but we acted like a tech company,
Yeah.
and that led to we hired really young people. We just did a whole bunch of different things that worked really well, and I think that all stemmed back from the engineering background. Was It's not just whether an engineering background isn't just the ability to write code or to build things. It's also the ability to take and understand technology quickly and then apply it into a different use case. And in this case, it was property management. So it was like the perfect background, and we eventually grew that to managing about 5,000 properties, and we really did that on the back of kind of all the skills I had learned from digital advertising. And what's funny is Nate, my business partner, he came from education, and running an operations team, especially a big team. I mean, what are you doing most of the time? You're actually teaching people. If you think about it, right? And so, actually, for both of us, our skill sets were very transferable,
Yeah.
and I see that. I don't think it's necessarily something to hide from. I think if you find yourself doing something day to day that you're just not excited about, I think making a switch is great, and then you just have to kind of lean into what makes me who I am, and what can I take and use that in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate the perfect setup for the next question here because it seems like a lot of your successes stem from your ability to adapt to those new markets, different markets, and not just in property management. It seems like you and Nate and the rest of your company, obviously not to downplay everyone else's involvement in what you guys have all done, but it seems like you're always looking for those new opportunities and how can we kind of grow from here. So what does that challenge look like for you? How have you kind of pushed yourself to expand on your skills so that you have that ability to not put limitations on what projects you want to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. One is seem to have this knack for um looking at a new problem, but being able to take away the maybe the constraints that people oftentimes put on it, the
Mhm.
kind of the traditional way of doing it. And I trying to look at things from a new lens and say like, all right, if I here's the core problem. If I knew nothing, if I'd never seen a way to solve this before, what would I do that, without maybe necessarily being sucked into kind of the traditional way of doing it? I'll give you an example. Our company we ended up hiring about 40 people in Mexico on our team, which at the time, now it's become more of a known thing, but back then no one hired 40 people in Mexico to work for a property management company. The
Mhm.
the traditional idea was property management company people have to be local. But when we started to break down the jobs, we said this actual job, the person, all they're doing is sitting at a desk all day.
Mhm.
And by the way, Americans hate this job, so maybe we can find someone in Mexico. And so uh, I think that like looking at a problem from its core and say, okay, what is the actual issue here, and not being forced into the way everyone does it, but say if I were to look at this thing from a brand new lens. And by the way, sometimes being an outsider is a great there because you come in and I love to say to people, look, man, I'm new. So I'll give you an example. We just started a painting company
Mhm.
about a year ago, and I kid you not, you wouldn't trust me to paint your house. I mean, I am not good at painting.
Mhm.
Um, but what's interesting about that is because I'm not historically a painter, everything about the company I look at from almost this brand new lens, and I say, look, guys, just I don't know anything about painting. Teach me. And
Yeah.
so I just do a lot of listening and understanding. And then when I hear something that doesn't make sense, I try to kind of like push people a little further to say like, well, why do we do it that way? Other industries don't do it that way. Is there something that we could do maybe a little bit different here? Um, and then the other point I'll make is I am just avid about, everyone says like networking. I think that term is thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Um, for me, networking is basically, can I find like 15 to 20 super high quality friends that are also really great in the industry? And
Mhm.
I always say I'm like friend shopping. The reason I say it that way is once someone's like, think about us, like, because we're friends, when I saw your post, I want to help you out. I jumped on this in a couple of days. If we didn't have that friendship, if I had just randomly met you at a meetup one day,
Yeah.
you don't have that level of built-in trust. So to go back to your original question, like by building these friendships, I think one of the first things I normally do. Then when I get into a situation where I'm like, this doesn't make sense, I can then text one of these people who I've met along the way and say like, hey man, what would you do here? Or does
Yeah.
this seem right? And I get like a really frank, honest answer back that I find to be like super helpful to
Yeah.
moving things forward.
Definitely, definitely. So these next two questions are kind of going to be worded the same, and they're not meant to discourage people. It's just you're in two industries now in terms of real estate and also being a business owner that a lot of people right now with the way the job market is, they're looking for anything and wanting to get their start. So this is more to shed light, answer some questions, give some initial insight, not to say you can't do this, but
Yeah.
here's what to expect if you're going to. And real estate's one of those industries where a lot of people see, hey, I know so and so is an agent, or so and so got and started in property development, property management. They're doing great. I want that same level of success. But then they get in there and there's a lot more to it than that. So, walk me through that kind of process. What strategies or habits have you kind of developed each step of the way in terms of building this company that kind of you found effective in not only achieving but then maintaining the success you have?
Yeah. Um, well, look, real estate at its core is basically two things. It's marketing and it's problem solving. That's what real estate really is. Everybody thinks it's houses. It's not houses. You can learn the house part, but it's marketing and it's problem solving. And the reason why I dumb it down to those two things is the people who don't do great in real estate, whether they're an agent or a wholesaler, they're every single time they have an issue in one of those two buckets.
Mhm.
And marketing, I bring that up because most people, when they think about going to real estate, marketing is the last thing they think of.
Yeah.
But if you think about, being a real estate agent, the single number one trait is marketing.
Mhm.
marketing not just the house, but marketing yourself and getting in front of a lot of people. And so that's kind of the marketing front of it. And the problem solving, real estate, I think back to the last 10 years, and every single week, even today, we get new things that come our way that we've just never seen before.
Yeah.
And the successful people in real estate are really good at taking a new problem and just thinking it through and talking it through or working with someone to get to a final solution. By the way, some of that's just grit. Some of that's just working your way through a tricky solution.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's creative solutions. Sometimes it's like I said before, sometimes it's texting somebody who might be able to kind of guide you along. Um, but I mean, on every single week, things come up in real estate that you just can't really expect. It's not real estate is not like read a manual and follow the manual. That's just not how it works.
Right.
Houses and industries like this are too complicated. There's too much going on. And so what you're really doing, you're marketing, you're getting yourself out there, and then you're solving a problem, whether that's your problem or you're helping someone else solve their problem. In property management, you're helping somebody else solve their problem, their problem with a tenant, their problem with a house, their problem with the city. No one goes to a property management company and says, well, everything's going great here. Can I get some help?
Got it. Yeah.
You're being brought in because things aren't going great because there's an issue.
Mhm.
And some of those issues you've seen over and over once you do it for a while. But a lot of times you haven't seen these issues before. And sometimes you just gotta think like, all right, how do I solve this problem? And so that's kind of the crux of it. Um, and then I also just think, look, I don't care what industry you're in, but in particular in real estate, I've never seen someone be successful who's not willing to work hard.
Yeah.
Um, I just unfortunately, if you think real estate, everyone's like, oh, I want passive income. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
passive income comes from decades of working hard and building and creating businesses and structures and systems.
Right.
But early on, it's I'll give you a quick example. I've gone to a real estate meetup about twice a week for about a decade. So you figure that's you do some quick math. That's like 1,000 events I've been to.
Right.
Um, Most people don't want to do that. I mean, most people want to come home and watch Netflix.
Yeah.
And so I said, no, I'm going to try to make this thing work. And the reason I like meetups is because it's two things you knock off the list. One is you gain information for free, by the way,
Mhm.
and then the other thing is you meet people who eventually can become part of that friend group. So
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, talking about putting in the work, that's the other path people are thinking to explore right now is starting my own business, start my own company. Especially I'm in talent acquisition. It's tough out there right now, and a lot of people are like, I'm just going to start my own agency. The idea is there, and you have the skills, the experience, but that's just kind of like the groundwork, and there's a lot more to it. And so, for you, as someone who's started a few different businesses in different industries, walk me through that process beyond just you said yourself, I knew eventually I wanted to start my own business. So you have that plan in place. What were some of those steps to kind of get that from idea to I actually have a business that I'm running?
yeah, yeah. Well, first off, I would say entrepreneurism is definitely not for everyone.
Right.
It's not for the faint of heart. Um, you know, I mean, countless, countless nights away from the family and doing things that you don't want to do. When you have a job, you the thing that becomes really tricky, you can push off to someone else. At some point, when you and the company, all the worst situations come to you. So the ball ultimately is in your court to resolve it. So I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone. Probably not most people. Um, the big advice that I give people, if you really do want to start a company, what I suggest is, I'm not a big fan of people kind of spending years and years like planning and thinking about it. Instead, I say, if you really want to give it a shot, it's how fast can you get a minimal viable product off the ground? It's a tech term that's used often, but I use it in business too. So if you thought you could make amazing pillows, you think you could be the best pillow maker, and you want to build a kingdom of making the world's more pillows than anyone else in the world, how do you get that launched? How you get it launched is you probably make one pillow, right? And you see if people like it. Could you sell, like, how fast could you sell one pillow to one individual? And that you will learn more from selling one pillow to one individual than you ever will from writing a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I always come back to is like, so for us, like I'll give you an example. We this past summer, or about a year ago, we had sold our last company and we wanted to figure out what we want to do next. And so we actually launched a couple different companies because we actually didn't know which one would be most successful. So we launched a painting company and we launched an appraisal company and we launched basically a media company.
Mhm.
And it turned out that the painting company took off really fast. It was very well received. Clearly, there was a need for that. We doubled down and now we've iterated and now it's scaling really fast.
Mhm.
But, the initial launching of the painting company it was one painter painting, one house a week.
Yeah.
The most almost boring. I mean, really, at its core, it's nothing exciting. It's not your first iteration is not nothing groundbreaking.
Mhm.
You think about Facebook. Facebook got its start by being basically an online picture album for
Yeah.
students at Harvard University. Just Harvard, just pictures. And so I think that sometimes people overcomplicate this. I once heard Zuckerberg, I love the story. He was asked after they were at four colleges, he was asked, so like, what are your future plans for Facebook? And Zuckerberg said, it's to launch the fifth college. And they said, no, 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 like more broad. And he said, we'll get there later. Right
Yeah.
now, we got to launch the fifth college. I love that.
Yeah.
That's what entrepreneurship is. Yes, you need to have a vision. Of course, he did, and he continues to iterate on that vision. But at its core, it's launching a product and seeing if it actually works. And then you're going to learn if you like it or not, because
Yeah.
um, it's a whole nother feeling. Some people love it. I love it. I love the feeling of building things. Uh, but you got to really love that because the tough days are really tough.
Yeah.
And there's weeks where you're working crazy hours and grinding things out
Yeah.
because you have to.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I've heard you mention it a few times when talking about real estate, talking about building your own business is marketing, branding are key components of that. And I think at its core, branding is one of those things that's often overlooked, especially when you're looking for something new, because you need to talk about your personal branding too. Who am I as an individual? What am I going to bring to this company? What is my company going to bring to society? Things like that. And you've kind of been talking about that. I commented on your post the other day where you talked about just employee branding with just shirts, and it's a no-brainer. Yes, let's give our employees attire and get our name out there at the same time. But when you're looking more at the personal level, and for you yourself, you've been someone who's developed your personal brand, and people relate to that as well. How important was that in terms of making sure that people can identify who Chad is
Yeah.
as independent from the companies that you're with?
Yeah. So my approach with branding is I want to me just maybe it's everyone's got different approaches. Mine is I really like when it comes through to who you actually are. Like, so the brand that I put forth in real estate is actually the same brand of who you'd hang out with on a Friday night at a bar with some of my friends. So I don't try to kind of like camouflage it. I don't try to be somebody different. And then the way we talk about the company is is truthful. I mean, we try to be like really transparent and really honest. Um, there's some little tricks of the trade. I One thing I do, so you'll always see me when I'm out and about ever at a industry event or even just during the week, I always have on one of our brands. So I'm actually wearing the brand that we're building. I find that that's like such a little hack, but it totally works because you meet someone and of course they're drawn to your shirt. So like right now I have a covered painting shirt on. So I go to a meetup. I might meet 30 people. I say, "Hey, I'm Chad." And I don't before I even say anything, they say to me, "Hey, covered painting. What is that?" It's
Mhm.
just great. Now they had given me the opening to tell them what I'm up to without me feeling like I'm having to like kind of brag about, oh, this is what covered painting does.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing is I actually do. I'm a big believer in like wear the brand. Two is like be really transparent and try to have the brand reflect your ideals and
Mhm.
what you care about. For me, I'm like really big into transparency and analytical thinking and technology. So our brands typically take on those kind of ethos.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is I really believe, and this is maybe the most important point I can make, in trying to have a very narrow, focused goal of where the company's going. And then the brand is easy to come off of that. So, with Covered Painting, for example, our painting company, we do painting specifically for other businesses in real estate. So we paint for flippers, property management companies, and new construction. That's what we do.
Mhm.
So then on the branding side, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to figure out branding and how you talk about it and how you do social media posting because those are our customers. We're not trying to 10 years ago, the mistakes I made is I was trying to do too much in a business.
Mhm.
And I think that if you think about the best businesses, it's usually a really simple logo with a really simple tagline, and you know what that company stands for because they started out with something really focused and then they branched out over time.
Yeah.
But I think early on, you want to be really narrow, and then you can nail that branding of that company that directly matches who you're trying to go after. And I hope that makes sense, but I think that's like really important. And so you'll see us how we post on social media, like all of our things are thinking about that. Who are we ultimately talking to? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And then we're just like crazy big about just helping people.
Mhm.
So I give stuff away for free all the time. We just believe if, no different than this podcast you're doing. If you help enough people, good things come back to you.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm always in the business of how can I help someone? And I'm not in the business of how can I charge people things for things. If we can do something for somebody and either charge them a fair rate or charge them nothing sometimes, that will come back to us. We don't have to make money necessarily in every last
Yeah.
transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're also no stranger to podcasting, and you hear the comments. People say, "Oh, everyone has a podcast these days," and they're not wrong. I mean, there are a lot of podcasts out there, and I think it's important. So, shout out to Real Estate Hackers, your podcast, and what you were doing to bring people insight to the real estate business. But how would you say that podcasting itself has helped you, to go along with those branding efforts? You mentioned that you do a lot of meetups. You've hosted your own meetups, so how has being involved in a podcast kind of helped you determine what questions you want to ask when you're at a networking event, as well as know who you want to bring into conferences that you're going to host to draw that interest in?
Yeah, here's a funny answer to this one. This is, I think, one of my more unique answers. The trick of podcasting, what the best thing you get out of it is actually spending time with the person on the other side of the camera.
Yeah.
So if you think so, real estate hackers, I think we had over the years maybe 80 episodes, and I've kind of slowed down recently. I'll probably pick it up again.
Mhm.
But that meant I had 80 conversations with incredible people,
Yeah.
people that some of those people, for me to get an hour of their time to spend with me, they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Or if they would have done it, it would have been, maybe once over a lunch or something. But so I'm able to ask them whatever I want to ask, and I learn so much about them, and it bonds you in this way that's just a little bit different than just getting lunch with someone. And so for me, that's been the trick of podcasting was basically having some really great conversations with people that I really look up to. I
Mhm.
learned a lot. Obviously, I'm the one asking the questions. So I can ask them whenever I want to know.
Yeah.
And but then we're able to build this thing. And what's crazy is some of those valuable time is the couple minutes before, the couple minutes after, or the follow up from the podcast. Now this is a little different. We're friends, but a lot of these people I interview, I'm not friends. I mean, I don't know the guy.
Yeah.
And then we end, and now I've got a few minutes where he'll talk to me like we were friends and like we knew each other when
Yeah.
before then we didn't. So I think that's really valuable. Even if your audience isn't that dramatic, I do think it elevates you up a notch. I think that people, especially if you stay at it for a while, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Everyone says, how do you make a great podcast? Go do 100 of them.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So if you stay at it for a while, your audience will build, you'll get better at asking questions, and you're just going to meet some incredible people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I mean, not that I don't have my friends on my podcasts, but on this one specifically, it's few and far between. And it, hundreds of people now that I've met that I keep in contact with, and that's enough an overlooked aspect of what benefits come from being a part of one for sure.
Yeah.
So, last question I have is the question I ask anyone who joins me on this. And you've given a lot of insight advice along the way, but I always ask, what is a key piece of advice that you've either received along the way throughout your career that you kind of relied upon? As always came back to, man, this was really great advice. This has really helped me out. Or if nothing specific, that piece of advice that people come to you with questions, how do I get started? How do I make my career switch? That advice that you find yourself giving more than anything else.
Look, I'll give you a fun one, and that is, I always think if the golden life is to let's use a basketball analogy. Okay, I know you like basketball. I'm a big sports fan, right? If your goal in life is to make as many shots as possible, okay, whatever that is, you figure out what that means. But if your goal in life is to make shots, right? You have two ways to make more shots. You can either shoot more, or you can shoot at a higher percentage. And you played basketball with me. I'm actually not very good at basketball. Okay,
Yeah.
right. But I love basketball.
Yeah.
And what I learned in basketball was if I can figure out a way to work harder than other people to use basketball, if I can get the extra rebound, if I can figure out a way to put up an extra shot, I get an extra steal, my shooting percentage might be the same, but I can make more shots if I take more shots.
Mm-hmm.
And I've applied that to basically everything I do in life is the thing I know I can control is how much I shoot. Early on in my career, that just came down to hours worked. I outworked everybody. And I did it because I knew if I worked an extra 5 to 10 hours, I'd get a couple extra shots out. The shots might be an extra meeting with somebody, an extra phone call, an extra in real estate, an extra tour of a house that we might be able to buy.
Yeah.
So I was just always obsessed with controlling what I can control, and that was taking more shots than anybody else. And by doing that, it's interesting. Two things happen. One is by the nature of taking more shots, you're going to make more. The other thing is you're getting more reps at whatever that thing is in life,
Yeah.
and you're going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, that's always what I think about is how do I take more shots at whatever I'm trying to do? And that has stuck with me in everything I've ever done in life,
Yeah.
sales, building companies, trying to, whatever it is, buy houses, is just, can I control the number of shots I take? And if I can control that and I can take more shots than the average person, good things will happen, especially if I'm focused on something over a long period of time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, brother, before I let you go here, take some time, plug your companies. Where can people find you? Where can they follow your pages? Where can they connect with you? Anything else that you've got that you want people to know about?
Yeah, sure. So if people are actually interested in real estate, we hold free real estate meetups. You can find that info on realestatehackers.com. You can walk in off the street, have never known anything about real estate, and we'll welcome you with the open arms, and you'll learn something. So they're usually once a month. Realestatehackers.com is that. And then my personal email, it's chad at coveritpainting.com. You can use that one. The thing we're most interested in right now is growing this business to business painting company. We're learning a lot. We're about 25 painters, and I think providing a really unique service to people in the real estate sphere who need a trusted painting company at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And you can always follow me on social media, Chad Gallagher. I seem to be on Facebook. I'm probably the best at. About once a week, I try to write something that hopefully is insightful to people.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Chad. Make sure you're connecting with him. I hope you all have a great week ahead and see you next Monday.
All right. Go Birds. See you, buddy.